This story took place during the summer at a housing development in Illinois, when my friend and I were 11 and 12. During my first summer in my new home, somewhat out in the sticks, my friend from school and I loved to run around the neighborhood and into the forest behind the homes. While we were out, we noticed an ice cream truck that seemed to be tracking us. It had its music running, so we sort of wrote it off and continued our adventure. Every time we'd pop out of the woods again, the ice cream truck would never be too far behind. Same driver, same plate. We laughed and joked about it being some weird new business tactic to get kids to buy. However, we were broke, so we just kept playing. The stalking was constant after a while. Every turn we'd make, no matter where we'd pop up in the housing development, it was always near. The driver always pretended he didn't see us, but kept pace as we walked. Eventually, it was time to go home, and so we did. When I returned home, I told my mum about the experience, and she called the police. After some questioning, they decided I was just letting my imagination run wild, but they'd check it out anyway. The initial search of the neighborhood turned up nothing but a single ice cream truck driven by a woman run by a reputable company. About a week later, they got a similar report from another young girl in the neighborhood. They found the truck with the exact guy, completely unlicensed, with a little boy unconscious and tied up in the back. Growing up, I lived in a decent-sized middle-class apartment complex. This story happened sometime between 1988 and 1990, when I was about 4 or 5. Since there was only one driveway in and out of the complex, my mother pretty much let me roam around by myself from a very young age. My court or block of apartments was the first one you passed when entering the complex, and my apartment was about 100 feet from it. I wasn't supposed to leave the court unless my mom knew whose place I was going to. I was a very curious and precocious child and very social. My mum called me the mayor because I knew who a good number of people in the complex were. Overall, I had a few run-ins with creeps, weirdos, and a definite pedo or two over the years living there, but nothing that ever escalated into any sort of worrisome incident. My parents were both pretty tough growing up and educated me early on street smarts and self-defense. They taught me that it's okay to talk to strangers in certain situations because not everyone is bad, and how to tell when someone might be a danger to me. At one point, we had a particularly ugly, creepy ice cream man. He had a Billy Ray Cyrus type of spiky mullet, always wore tank tops, horrible acne, weird teeth, and a piggish nose. At the time, I considered him in his 40s, but looking back on it, he was probably in his late teens or early 20s. He loved talking to the other kids about professional wrestling. I went to his truck once, along with some friends, when he was parked outside the pool. I didn't have enough money for something, so I said, "Oh, never mind." But he gave it to me anyway, for whatever money I did have. That was nice of him, but I didn't like the way he smiled at me. It was way too friendly. So if I heard the ice cream man, I'd peek out the window to see which ice cream guy was pulling into the complex. And if it wasn't him, I'd get ice cream. I don't know how much time had passed between my first encounter with him and the last, but in between, there were a few occasions where I was coming home or going to a different court for whatever reason, and if I happened to be walking down the main drive, he'd pull up next to me on the sidewalk, and I'd pretend he wasn't there and cut through a court and hide. He'd holler things like, "Why are you so scared of me? I'm nice. You make me feel bad." One day my mum said I couldn't leave the court for whatever reason. My friend lived in the corner apartment of the court after mine, so I sat on my court's corner nearest hers and she sat in her corner. We were talking and tossing toys to each other across the parking lot. I heard the ice cream man approaching. Even though I was at the other end of my block, he saw me when he pulled in. He started driving towards me, and I just ran and hid in my court till he moved further into the complex. I waited for what felt like enough time and didn't hear the music anymore. I walked back to the corner, and my friend had gone inside already. I picked up whatever toy I had left behind, and as I turned to start walking home, I noticed he's sitting in the parking lot of the court, across the main drive in his truck with the music off. I dropped what I was holding and went to pick it back up. He's already directly across the street from me. Stopped. "Hi, what's your name? Can we be friends? I feel bad that I scared you. I'm a really nice guy." He had on a tie-dye tank top. His hair was really greasy, and his acne was very flared up. I remember being so repulsed by him. My legs locked up because I was so scared, and mentally I was trying to decide if I'd have a better chance of escaping through the woods or if I should chance it down the main drive. "I can't have friends, my mum said so," I said confidently. "Well, let me give you a free ice cream. I feel bad," he replied. "My mum says I can't have ice cream." "Okay, can you have candy soda or a snap bracelet?" "Sorry, I can't cross the street," I said, but that didn't stop him. "That's okay, I'll come to you. You can ride in the truck and play the music if you want." I realized this back and forth would be a losing battle for me, so I decided the best thing to do was play along. "Okay, if you turn the truck around, I don't have to cross the street, so my mum won't get mad." He'd have to leave and immediately re-enter the complex to do that, but it would buy me 30 seconds. He got way too excited that I seemed willing and started to drive. That's when I took off running. I got home, and my mum was on the phone with my dad, who was out of state for the day. I told her what happened, and she made me tell my dad, and they both told me how proud of me they were and how I had made really grown-up decisions. After that, I avoided ice cream men at all costs unless I was out of town. I still think about that to this day, and I always tell that story to the kids I babysit. I hope I was the only kid he tried to bait, and that no one else had a worse experience with him. When I was little, I spent a lot of time at the park. My mum was a stay-at-home mum, so she'd take me and my friends there almost every day during the summer, and if we were lucky, she'd buy us each something from the ice cream truck. I was 6 or 7, and my mum had taken me and 3 girls from the neighbourhood to play at the park. It was sunny and warm and pretty much one of those absolutely idyllic days you see in the movies. Everyone was in a good mood, my mum included. When we heard the ice cream truck approaching, she gave us all some money to buy treats, opting to hang back and chat with a friend. After all, we weren't leaving her sight, so nothing bad could happen, right? The ice cream truck wasn't the one we usually saw, but that wasn't unheard of. Quite a few drove around town, and they'd all compete to hit the park crowd. This one looked run down, but when you're 7, it doesn't matter. Ice cream is ice cream. My friends and I raced to get in line and were delighted to be the first ones there. The ice cream man seemed just as excited to see us. "I have a special treat for you pretty girls today," he told us as we handed him our money, silencing our requests for our usual favourites. We all were sceptical, but he insisted that his special treat would be much yummier than any ice cream we'd had before, so we all shrugged and agreed. Like I said, ice cream is ice cream. The man disappeared back into the truck for a few minutes, and we could hear him giggling. Now I'd find it creepy, but we all thought it was funny at the time. A few minutes later, he handed us what looked like ordinary ice cream sundaes. "I promise they're extra good, so don't waste any," he told us with a wink. As we returned to my mum, the ice cream truck left quickly. That was when I remember thinking something was off, because the trucks usually stayed around much longer, getting as much business from all the kids as possible. That didn't stop me from eating the ice cream, though, but as I was eating it, I noticed that something tasted off. Soon my friends were all complaining that our ice cream tasted funny. My mum had also noticed how quickly the truck had left, so she insisted on tasting mine, just to be safe. I'll never forget how quickly she marched us out of the park that day, or how horrified she looked. At the time, I didn't understand why she was so upset until years later she told me the ice cream had tasted like semen. The ice cream truck guy had masturbated into our sundaes. Horror story part 2, realizing your mother recognizes the taste of semen. The police questioned my friends and me about the man in the truck, but none of us could give a good description. I think they must have tested the DNA in the ice cream, but I don't remember much from the whole investigation because my mum shielded me from it. I do know, however, that they never caught the guy. So, creepy ice cream dude, let's not meet again. Let me preface this with the fact that this was the one time my parents let me stay home unsupervised for an entire day without a much older babysitter. And so begins my story. It all started one hot, boring afternoon in the suburbs. I spent the day with some neighbourhood kids while our parents were at work. Although I was only 10 years old, my parents let me spend the day with the 2 girls that lived across the street because the oldest of the 2 sisters was 13. The other, my best friend Sarah, was 9 years old at the time. We were laying on the trampoline playing the "What do you want to do?" I don't know, "What do you want to do?" game. Then we heard that exciting little jingle in the distance. The ice cream man, We all started scrambling out the door after the older sister, Tammy, who had the money. We rushed down the street to the waiting ice cream man, joining the group of boys who were outside playing lacrosse at the time. As soon as we walked up and saw the driver, I got an eerie feeling. Something just seemed off about him. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, considering he had a massively wretched scar down the side of his face. But he didn't stop smiling. It was a sinister type of smile, coupled with an unrelenting gaze fixed right on us. We quickly bought our ice cream and bubble gum and left. As we walked back towards our cul-de-sac, Bossy Tammy ordered us to stop and sit on our neighbour's driveway and eat our ice cream. She said, "Look, I've heard stories on the news of these guys stealing kids, so let's just sit here on Miss Day's driveway until he drives away." Until then, Tammy had a history of telling us bogus stories to try and scare us, so Sarah started whining. I would have agreed with her on any other day, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. The ice cream truck continued towards us, driving incredibly slowly around our cul-de-sac. He was still smiling, and his eyes were still trained on the three of us. When he passed us, he even winked. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, we made a mad dash for Tammy and Sarah's house. We locked the doors and then fled to her parents' bedroom. A few minutes passed and we had all calmed down a bit, settling onto her parents' bed to watch some terrible daytime TV like Jerry Springer or something. At that point, out of her parents' window, facing toward the cul-de-sac on the second floor, we saw the ice cream truck stop outside Miss Day's house. We didn't know how long he had been there, considering he didn't have the jingle playing. He wasn't parked there very long, but eventually he slowly drove away. By this time, we are all hyperventilating. Before we could take a minute to recover, he drove by a third time. This time, however, we saw him get out of the truck in front of Miss Day's house and walk up toward the front door, examining the outside of the house. He had a paper pad out and began to jot some things down. At this point, we all started panicking as Tammy yelled, "He's writing down the address!" He returned to the ice cream wagon, and as he started to turn the truck around, he looked up and saw us in the window. We hit the floor like we were under fire, and watched him out of a side window. He stopped the truck right in front of Tammy and Sarah's house, and jotted more down on his paper pad. As soon as he drove away that time, we saw our neighbour arrive home from work. In a complete frenzy, we ran over to her, knowing she worked at the police station, and told her what had happened. Ultimately, they found the guy, along with a notepad of descriptions of each of us, the addresses of Miss Day's house and Tammy and Sarah's house, and plans for when he would come back for us. The guy was a registered child sex offender with a warrant out for his arrest. I'm not sure how he got into the position of selling ice cream to children in the first place, but he was. So now every time I hear the ice cream wagon jingle, I feel nauseous and unnerved. TLDR, I was almost abducted by the ice cream man, who ended up being a creepy, scar-faced child molester. Do you have scary stories you'd like to hear told? Send me an email at nocturnalreveries@proton.me. I will be sure to credit you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more tales, both true and imagined. Until we meet again, I've been Basil, and you've been lovely. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.